Fam, let's start out with Christine Assange, who is Julian Assange's mother. And she, a few days ago, thanked Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for her bill, in particular, the first one we're going to talk about. She said U.S. Congress Rep. Tulsi Gabbard introduces bill to reform the Espionage Act and strengthen whistleblower protections. People like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange acted in the public interest to expose into that impacted the American people. So Tulsi Gabbard introduced this bill, and we're going to go through it so you guys know. The bill is called H.R. 8452,
yep.
And it's the bill to reform the Espionage Act and strengthen whistleblower protections. Okay,
yep.
so
which we also understand too. Once we go over this, it's very, very broad. It's very vague. It's not in particular, and it's been abused by different administrations, whether it be the Obama administration, and Donald Trump. They're abusing this particular act. So go right ahead, fam.
All right, so we're just going to go over some of this. Tulsi Gabbard introduced this bill, and it's called the Protect Brave Whistleblowers Act. It's intended to reform the Espionage Act to better protect the whistleblowers. She also introduced a resolution defending the actions of Edward Snowden, a whistleblower who exposed illegal and unconstitutional surveillance programs run by the U.S. government, and calling for charges against him to be dropped.
The NSA.
This legislation is also supported by Daniel Ellsberg, who was known best for the 1971 expose on the U.S. government conduct in the Vietnam War, and
who is it supported by?
Daniel Ellsberg.
Ellsberg?
Yes.
Ellsberg.
Yeah, I know Ellsberg.
I know Ellsberg. I know Flowers. I know them both. So.
And like Pasta said, this was the Pentagon Papers. He was charged in 1973 under the Espionage Act. Oh yeah, that is. Yeah. He is like Ellsberg is like we should get him on the show. I mean, he's just.
Which he had a lot of help in his time. It's kind of funny because
did.
right now you got Tulsi Gabbard going out there sticking up for Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Daniel Ellsberg got a lot of help from Mike Gravel. Yeah. Really, to tell you the truth, on the Senate floor from Alaska, and really to tell you, was able to be there to protect him, to put a light on this situation, and elevate Ellsberg's message.
And just to go off that, Daniel Ellsberg wrote an article on The Guardian not too long ago, about 6 years ago, where he was talking about how John Kerry went up there. He was on MSNBC, and he was propping up Daniel Ellsberg, saying people like Daniel Ellsberg are heroes, but Edward Snowden is a coward. And so Daniel Ellsberg wrote an op-ed defending Edward Snowden, and he actually, during the Assange trial, he was also out there saying, if I was able to get out of this, if I got protections, so should Julian Assange, so should have Edward Snowden. And it's not fair that this is happening to them. And I was able to be, looked at as a hero. And so his whole point in that article was that whistleblowers, because of the Espionage Act, can't come back and have a fair trial in America. They would forever have to be perpetually in hiding elsewhere, or if they came back, they would be put in solitary confinement, as we know. So this is like, it's being halted by Daniel Ellsberg. I mean, he's recognizing Tulsi Gabbard, and she said, when brave whistleblowers come forward to expose wrongdoing within our government, they must have the confidence that they have, and the press who publishes this information will be protected from the government retaliation.
Big time importance right there.
Yeah, people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, among others, acted in the public interest to expose information that impacted the American people. They are being persecuted for doing so, and under current law are legally unable to defend themselves in court because they are prohibited from speaking about their intent for disclosing information. All charges against them and extradition efforts should be dropped. We must ensure that whistleblowers charged under the Espionage Act are treated fairly under our judicial system and able to mount a just legal defense.
Yeah, they can't even defend themselves because they're silenced when even talking about their intent and what they're doing. But for a second, could we talk about exactly what they did? Because I think people forget what WikiLeaks did was they provided the truth. They gave us transparency. And for people on the left, the progressives out there more than anything, they gave us all the information on what we thought was happening. WikiLeaks gave us the clear proof that the DNC was rigging the elections against Bernie Sanders, not just in a strategic way, but coming together, but overall, they showed, how they just took this nomination away from this man and they worked together, meanwhile portraying to the public Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all those other people that they're running a fair election and nothing's going on. They also provided, WikiLeaks, war crimes.
Yep.
Okay, that video where we see the helicopter shooting down people. Remember, these bullets are this big, ladies and gentlemen. They're not like little small mini bullets.
Yep.
These bullets are this big that rip through human flesh, and they killed reporters, people in the press. The truth tellers, the people bringing information to light, that's who they killed. WikiLeaks has provided so much information, and fam, I believe they have a 100% accuracy rate, right?
Yeah,
Meaning they never had to retract the story.
Yeah. And
so why aren't we standing up for them? Why isn't the left standing up?
Because they don't think this matters, because Julian Assange had some accusations, because Julian Assange was told that people were told that he was, you know, an asshole or whatever they were told. And because the left a lot of the times puts emotion over logic, and that is a very, very big problem that we have. They are manipulated by emotions, through emotions, by the establishment. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But what you said is absolutely true. And WikiLeaks also it's also wrapped into the Russiagate stuff, which we're going to talk about later, because they used Russiagate, which is the actual conspiracy theory, to really divert attention from the crimes they were actually committing. And the United States government constantly does this all the time. They divert your attention into something else to blame somebody else, so you don't pay attention to what they're doing.
Or they scare you into it too as well.
Right,
they shame you, scare you into it. I mean, I think a lot of the reasons why a lot of people on the left have ignored this is because he went after the Democratic Party. But you know what? And people were like, well, he's working for Putin. Like, no, he never. The reason why he didn't go to the embassy, the Russian embassy, and seek extradition to Russia like Edward Snowden is because he exposed Putin before. You know what I'm saying? He plays no favorites. So this whole mentality that you were fed that Russia was, you know, he's working for Russia now, was just a far-fetched fairy tale.
It was
all
all
a fairy
smears
tale. It was.
To discredit him.
And the fact that he went after the Democratic Party, I think, is why a lot of people on the left are upset and ignoring this, because the emotions that come into play.
Exactly. So this is what Daniel Ellsberg said, and it's important that you guys hear it, because he, like I said before, he's making a distinction. If this long overdue revision of the 1917 Espionage Act had been law half a century ago, I myself could have had a fair trial for releasing the Pentagon Papers in 1971. Justice under law unavailable to me and to every other national security whistleblower indicted and prosecuted since then. I applaud, congratulate, and thank Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for protecting our First Amendment against growing and unprecedented assault and providing a legal defense for unauthorized disclosures in the public interest, the lifeblood of a republic. This is like Daniel Ellsberg. This is huge that he is thanking Tulsi Gabbard for doing this. I have to reiterate, she is the only Democrat that is actually talking about this, which is like crazy to me, because I thought the Democrats were supposed to be left of the Republicans on this, and now you're making neocons and a lot of Republicans look to your, like they're to your left when it comes to these things like protecting the First Amendment. So in essence, the Democrats are going to push some people to the right. And then you care about fascism. You're pushing people towards fascism because people are like, wait a minute now, if Republicans are doing this, I might as well vote Republican. See, you're working. And I think the Democrats, I honestly, this is aside, but I think the Democrats actually are doing this on purpose, because I think this is all a game. I think it's fascist versus non-fascist. I mean, people want to call themselves anti-fascist. Standing for this is actually being anti-fascist.
Yeah. When you suppress speech, when you suppress a free press, that is the definition of fascism right there. And stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And this is what it is. They don't want people to know the truth. They only want to control. When they have the keys to the kingdom, meaning the elites, and they can control media, they can control the narrative, they can convince people that climate change doesn't exist. They can convince people that Medicare for all is a form of socialism, Nazism, it's bad, that's going to eventually
bankrupt the
country and be like, rot from the inside because it's a social communist program. If they can control the media, they control that statement, they can control that narrative, they control that rhetoric, and then you get nothing. All I'm saying, and this is something that we can do right off the bat, is if we protect our civil liberties, if we have free and fair elections, then we can have all those nice things. But until we get it, until we get freedom of speech, until our First Amendment rights are protected, until the press is protected, until real whistleblowers. Remember the whistleblowers for the Ukraine thing? There were CIA personnel, and they were trying to say they were whistleblowers, and people.
That's why they were being protected. That's why.
Exactly.
The people aren't being protected are the real whistleblowers.
Exactly. Thank you, fam.
So let's just go over some bullet points of H.R. 8452. It would create additional protections for the whistleblowers tried for violations of the Espionage Act. It would allow defendants in the Espionage Act cases to speak to their intent in their defense, which is currently not allowed, believe it or not. They can't even defend themselves. They're not afforded the opportunity to speak towards their intent or motive during their defense as they could under a normal court case. Add a public interest defense that would permit defendants to raise the defense that their disclosures were in public interest. And again, this bill is also supported by the Pentagon Papers' Daniel Ellsberg.
Yeah. Do you know that when you're talking about you can't even speak up in your own defense, they can't even speak to your lawyers. They got Julian Assange in the back of the courtroom in a glass thing, and if he wants to do something, he's got to write it on a Post-it, hand it down below. The guy's going to take it up and walk it up to their lawyer. I mean, this is a kangaroo court if I've ever seen one.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to punish the guy who gave us so much information to what's really going on in our politics today.
It's as bad as the police investigating themselves.
Yeah.
That is literally. Why do you think the police can investigate themselves? Because we allowed this shit to happen on a bigger scale, on a macro level. Then there's a micro level. This is all directly connected to the police state, which is controlled by these intelligence agencies. So
we'll look into it, fam.
So, fam, Tulsi not only introduced this bill protecting whistleblowers, but she also introduced House Resolution 1162, calling for all charges to be dropped against Edward Snowden, who is, of course, the man who exposed illegal and unconstitutional acts of abuse within our own government. The resolution also calls for Congress to do more to protect whistleblowers who expose illegal and unconstitutional acts of abuse within our government. She has previously spoken in support of Julian Assange and applauded a ruling in the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which determined that the warrantless telephone surveillance program that secretly collected the phone records of millions of people violated the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The NSA program in question was exposed by Edward Snowden, who leaked the details of this to the press. And so we have a list of things she did, but I just want to reiterate that this isn't the first time she's talked about Julian Assange. Meanwhile, we have a bunch of politicians that people love, like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all these people that, AOC the other day was like, I just want you guys to have healthcare I have. Okay, what are you doing about it? I'm looking at people's actions, and the problem with a lot of the emotionalness in the left spectrum of of this country is that they look at symbolic platitudes and words over policy and actions. And that is a really big problem that we have.
Yeah. Just a really quick reiteration of what happened on when it comes to this over here. And she's saying directly, let's drop these charges against Edward Snowden. There was a lot of scuttlebutt or buzz going on that the NSA was spying on its own citizens and not using the FISA courts and the warrants correctly, where they said they were going to be paying attention to our adversaries, that be it Russia, China, Iran, all those situations. So James Clapper was summoned by Congress, and he lied to Congress and said, no, the NSA is not collecting data on you or me or anybody else.
Literally lied.
Snowden drops all the information, gets the hell out of town. He, with the help of Glenn Greenwald, the Intercept, gets it out there, goes over to Russia, seeks asylum. They got him over there. Putin protects him. And then Clapper just kind of blows it off. Shahid Buttar goes to a hearing and tells Clapper, why are you being held accountable for lying in the courts? They arrest him for going out and calling out these people, whatnot. And what is James Clapper doing today? He's got a multi-million-dollar contract on MSNBC where he lied to the public. He lied to you about spying on us. Edward Snowden showed they were spying on us, American citizens, 4 times as much as they were spying on China and Russia and Iran put together. They're looking at us, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to control us. This is when we talk about our civil liberties and our privacy and our individual freedoms. This is what they're doing. And by doing so, they got a hand on everything, fam. They know everything that's going on at all times. They can make mastermind plans, the deep state, the CIA, intelligence, the elites, whoever's running things. They know. If they got your playbook, they know what you're going to do. They can defeat you electorally. They can defeat you in the streets. They can go out and frame you, do whatever they want, because they have all the information right there for them. And like I said, nobody paid a price. In fact, they got cushy jobs on mainstream media.
And those people with these cushy jobs are precisely the ones ignoring the Julian Assange trial, absolutely not even mentioning it. Sometimes if they do mention it, Daniel Ellsberg also talks about this. They mention him, but they don't mention anything regarding Edward Snowden or Julian Assange unless it's connected to Russiagate, which is pretty much you might as well not mention it because you're doing a disservice.
And what these guys did was something really, it's heroic, and it takes a lot of guts, I'm talking about bravery deep down inside to go out there and expose the national security, state. I mean, this is big, and if we don't get back on this, we don't nip this in the butt, they're going to kill the messenger every single time. So just be ready to be fed what they want you to hear, not the truth, not what's going out there.
And so I just want to point out a couple things because Pasta voted for Tulsi. I voted for Bernie. I like Tulsi. I have a lot of disagreements with her too. This isn't about Tulsi Gabbard as much as it is about, I'm giving her huge credit because she's the only one talking about this, and she's the only Democrat. And also we're going to talk about the smears against her too and how that's being twisted. But I do have to reiterate that she has been fighting against U.S. intelligence agencies and actions that threaten the privacy of American citizens. She has drawn from her military service and constitutional protections, and she's admonished the National Security Administration, the NSA, for its sweeping collection of personal data, supported legislation to curtail it, and voiced support for court decisions aiming to rein in the executive overreach. She also has an A+ legislative scorecard rating from the Restore the Fourth and Fight for the Future. Yeah. So those are things about Tulsi Gabbard. But let's go a little bit deeper, fam. So 1175, this is with in coalition with Thomas Massie. She introduced this bipartisan resolution defending the press, the free press, and calling for all charges specifically against Julian Assange to be dropped. I haven't seen anybody else be this specific regarding Julian Assange. Like, no, you have to drop all of the charges. So,
that's it right there. Put it up right there.
Awesome. So let's just I'm just going to highlight a couple things. Her and Massie is introduced this to defend the freedom of the press, noting that news gathering activities and news organizations' ability to acquire and publish information are protected under the First Amendment. This calls for the United States to drop all charges and efforts to extradite Julian Assange. She says, quote, "The freedom of the press is a vital function of a free democracy in which the government is accountable to the people. Julian Assange published information that exposed lies and abuses of power at the highest levels of our government. His indictment under the Espionage Act sends a chilling message to every member of the media and all Americans. U.S. government prosecutors now claim that any journalist or news organization that publishes classified material is liable to prosecution under the Espionage Act, which would have led to the indictment of the Washington Post for the publication of the Pentagon Papers. The federal government's prosecution of Julian Assange sets a dangerous precedent. All extradition efforts and charges under the Espionage Act against Julian Assange must be dropped now." And Massie also said, at a time when government officials claim the right to perform warrantless surveillance upon all American citizens, there is an urgent need to zealously guard freedom of the press and to demand government transparency and accountability. The ongoing attempts to prosecute Julian Assange threaten our First Amendment rights and should be opposed by all who wish to safeguard our constitutional rights now and in the years to come. I join my colleague, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, in calling for an immediate and end to all charges against Mr. Assange. So there we go.
She got two bills right there. One going directly in 1175, going after and saying drop the charges against Julian Assange. Yep. The other one saying drop the charges against Edward Snowden. And even furthermore, fam, a bill that says let's redo and make sure that this Espionage Act can't put anybody else in hot water, and redefine that the way it is because it's so broad and so vague that the U.S. government can take it and throw anybody they want behind bars. And so she's gotten boom, boom, boom here, fam.
And let's just highlight, Tulsi Gabbard was the only person that was running for president that largely, besides maybe Marianne Williamson, went on independent media. I mean, more than anybody else, she went on independent media. She would do interviews with everybody of any, like, whether you were right, independent, libertarian, left, ultra left. She came here and did an interview with us, whereas the Bernie Sanders campaign and Bernie Sanders did not do like the interviews with independent media as much as he should have at all. And she understands freedom of the press and what that means to people who are telling the truth, because she has been attacked by the establishment press and smeared by the establishment press. So I think also this is very consistent for somebody like that who has constantly been undermined and smeared by the fake press, by the PR machine, by the it's the propaganda machine, like the media that used to serve the public, the fourth estate that should have been the ones to look over the police state, the intelligence communities, the government. That's the point of the press. The point of the press isn't to pretty much regurgitate what they want you to say. It's actually to question it and make sure they're doing their job. That's the point of the press. That's not bias. That's literally the point. You're supposed to be the watchdog of these institutions of power.
Absolutely. And they've become the lapdog of the institutions of power. And we'll talk about that more as we talk about this Russiagate stuff that was recently been declassified by head of the security state, talking about, we'll get to that and stuff, but you can see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? They're not performing their duties, and that's what we have. You know what I'm saying? That's why they've all turned their back on the situation. And I think because Edward Snowden and Julian Assange has embarrassed them, therefore they're still kind of playing that same kind of rhetoric.
Right. I pointed these three bills out separately so we know exactly like what they're saying. So 1162 is the one with Matt Gaetz, who, it's another bipartisan resolution calling for charges against Edward Snowden to be dropped. So we kind of mentioned it before. Like Pasta said, it was the whistleblowers in general and reining in the Espionage Act. Then it was drop all the charges against Julian Assange. And this one is drop all the charges against Edward Snowden. Yeah. And so this week they they introduced that. And she said, we continue to see attacks on the American civil liberties and aggressive surveillance policies within our own government, trading on the fears of the American people. This occurred both under the Democratic and Republican administrations, while a few brave whistleblowers came forward to lift the curtain on the constitutional threats we faced. Edward Snowden has been persecuted for bravely exposing massive illegal government surveillance on all Americans, a finding backed by the U.S. courts as recently as last month. She's citing what what was done before.
The NSA kind of came forward and they said it was illegal what they did. That's what they said. Sorry, fam, go ahead.
Meanwhile, from former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper lied to Congress, saying this program did not exist and suffered no consequences whatsoever. All charges against Edward Snowden should be dropped. We need to protect whistleblowers, not the powerful elite. Yeah. So again, one of my criticisms on Tulsi was she didn't really go after the capitalists enough and stuff. Like she's not a socialist. She never claimed to be. But this is her saying we're going to go after the powerful elite and government. When she went after Hillary Clinton, she was saying, "Oh, we're going to go after the queen of the warmongers." She is going after these people. Did
you have to like that tweet again, by the way?
Oh yeah, I constantly have to like it.
Taking scrubbing my likes on that tweet.
Constantly have to like it.
And Pasta, didn't Shahid Buttar get arrested?
He did. This is what we talked about. He went there. He went to a hearing, and he started saying, "Why aren't you being held accountable for lying to, if anybody lied to the American people and lied to Congress, they'd be going to jail right now. Why did you get it?" They arrested his ass, and this is one of the reasons I've always liked Shahid, is because he understood, civil liberties and the point of protecting a free press. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, kudos, should I say?
Kudos.
Kudos. I can't even speak today.
It's that Brooklyn tongue.
By the way, Gates kind of over here, whatnot. This guy has kind of labeled himself somewhat as a populist right and stuff, and he's been awful on certain things. And I've never liked his rhetoric and sometimes the way he is when it comes to immigration. But when it comes to the security state, when it comes to ending some of the wars, Gates has ponied up and put himself over there and say, "Hey, no, we got to get out of Afghanistan. We got to do this stuff." Plus, he went head to head with everybody on the whole Russiagate thing when they was going back and forth, and Gates was under the spotlight when he was trying to say this Russiagating shit is bullshit. So,
and I have a feeling like if I were in Congress, I would actually because in my experience, when I've talked to people who are Republicans, who are people that are that aren't outright full on Nazi theocrats, that are okay, you can agree on some things. I feel like if I were in Congress, I would want to make some sort of okay, I don't agree with you on any of this, but can we at least do this? Isn't that the point of to get things passed, or to get support? And I think Tulsi is that kind of person that will talk to people. I mean, when I was bartending, I would talk to Republicans, and then they would listen to what I had to say. They'd be like, "Okay, I agree with you. Yeah. It's how you frame things. It's how you talk to people. It's how you say these things." And I think Tulsi Gabbard gets a lot of flack for that, but it's actually something that should be looked as a good thing, because as long as you don't compromise, as long as she's not I'm going to support the what is it, the Proud Boys, which she has never done. She has never supported any of these people. And so I just think it's interesting that people just kind of want to stay in their corners. How the hell are you going to find a solution? And she's always been consistent on that. I mean, I have my limits to who I can talk to and stuff like that. but at the same time, it's like people just want to like vilify her for like trying to get shit done.
And it's really a shame too, because a lot of people say that politics is about mitigating damage. No, it's about mitigating damage if you don't want to reach compromisation with the other side. She's always looking for some form of compromisation. Like, in other words, we're going to talk about Senator Wyden. He can russiagate like a son of a bitch, and some of the things he votes for is terrible. But when it comes to the areas of national security, maybe he's going to be a little bit more on the side. Same with Getz. Same with Paul. Same with Massey. And that's what real politics is about, is getting stuff done on a compromisation level where you can get and achieve certain things. Not this whole cancel culture, this push these people out, that these people are evil, we don't want to talk to them, they're racist, they're Nazis, we can't deal with them, and then therefore nothing gets done, and that's all you're doing is mitigating damage and trying to say justify voting for a person like Joe Biden because you're just trying to salvage what you can. It's just,
and you
it's
should
wrong.
work
What
with
she was doing is right.
On the left too, like you should. Well, on the center, you should work with neoliberals if they agree on something like that you agree with. I'm not saying you don't work with them either.
What can we agree with neoliberals on? I'm trying to think.
Maybe like a marijuana law or something. Maybe one of them is like, but I don't know.
Joe Biden didn't even put it on the platform.
It's harder to find that. But I'm saying if there were, it's like if somebody like Elizabeth Warren was actually pushing something good, then yeah, like you should work with them too. Like it's not a one-sided thing. Yeah. It should be, like whatever. But that's where we're in because we have a two-party system that is basically
But don't
an
you
oligarchy.
also feel that the left, though, the establishment left is more about the cancer culture than the establishment right? I think the establishment right still just thinks that they're right in their ideology, and I think they're wrong about a lot of things, the way they handle some things, especially when it comes to, climate change, when it comes to immigration and whatnot. They don't connect the dots, you know what I'm saying? I think sometimes, like, that's the one argument I can't stand having with the right is like, listen, guys, we're putting toxins in the air. It's got to be bad, no? I mean, if you're for individual responsibility, don't you believe on that? But there are other areas where we can find certain people on the right who are kind of like anti-war when it comes to these libertarian-minded people.
The problem with the left is you're right. They are more about cancel culture, but
well, at least the leadership, right?
The leadership,
Yeah.
but like when I went to this protest, BLM versus the Proud Boys, there was a few people that were screaming at each other, but then there were people like Lori Jones who were trying to talk about certain things. So there's people on both sides that are able to communicate, but there's always going to be people that just scream at each other and don't want to participate. That they're just going to say, "Why do you hate us? Like I hate you."
But
like
that guy
Joe
was
Biden,
asking,
blah blah blah.
right? That guy was like, "Why do you hate us? Why did you hate us?" I was looking for one of them instead of them saying "fuck you" to go and say, "I'm going to tell you why I hate us."
What she did. That's
yeah. I didn't catch a lot of it and stuff like that. But the guy was like, "Why do you hate us? Why do you hate us? Why do you hate us?" And I was looking for that conversation. So, well, it's not that we hate you. We just strongly dislike your ideology and your politics because we feel you're anti-immigrant. You're not realizing that these people, you're not having a compassionate heart that are coming here for a certain reason, searching for a better life. But it's not that they're evil or they're racist. It's that they always have this comparison on the right, it seems, a lot of them, that if you give to an immigrant or a person of color or a minority or something, you're taking away from a veteran or somebody who's an American. It's more about an exceptionalism, which is in itself, I guess, racism,
I think some people are I think some people are racist or just minimize everybody else's problems, but it does have a lot to do with the economic concern of like the blame that's been put on it. That's what Trump did. I mean, he just put the blame on minorities and
they're taking away your
economic
programs
issues
from a
when it was
veteran.
the corporations, and it was he can't say that because he was a businessman and he's not going to go after the corporations. And that was like the whole thing that Glory, when she was talking to this person, she was like, well, I don't understand. Like, you believe in the like, he was like, yeah, we need to get rid of the military industrial complex and blah 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 and protect our freedoms. And she's like, yeah, I totally agree, but Donald Trump isn't doing that. Like, he's literally a tool of the establishment. He's literally not doing what he was supposed to do. He's the one that could drop the charges on Julian Assange right now, and he's not doing that.
For handing you the election too.
There you go. So there's no point in, like, we don't like Biden either. But we don't but Trump is I mean, they're both corrupt. Like, what are you doing defending these politicians? That's why I was saying, like, these people have more in common with each other if they would just sit and talk than they do with these politicians that they're so fervently defending. And I didn't see that many people defend Joe Biden. In fact, in that protest, people were joining in and saying, fuck Biden, fuck Trump. Like, they were all saying that. And that's the point. Stop defending these politicians and look to what you guys can resolve together.
Yeah, and especially when we talked about the other day about, like, okay, what is it? His rhetoric or his policy? To me, it's the policy is going to put the label on the person. I'm going to judge a person based on their policy. And Donald Trump's policy in South and Central and Latin America, whatever you want to call it nowadays, that's where it was a very racist policy, where it continued on the Obama policy against Venezuela, where it allowed stuff to happen in Bolivia, where it's continuing the policies of Salvador, and that leads to your biggest what's the word I'm looking? The biggest plan you wanted to put forth was the wall, right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the big thing where a lot of people say, well, that's racist. That's the biggest plan. He's protecting Americans. Listen, you don't even have to build a wall if you stop with those racist policies in South and Central and Latin America. So to me, his biggest plan, his biggest what he wanted to do, he shot that himself by continuing on the same policies of the parties before him in South and Central and Latin America. So.
And I just wanted to read this House Resolution 1162 because it is actually really well written and it's not too long. So, Pasta, we can both read it.
Go ahead.
Whereas during a Senate hearing on March 12, 2013, James Clapper, then Director of National Intelligence, was questioned by Senator Ron Wyden and was asked whether the National Security Agency collected any type of data on all millions or hundreds of millions of Americans, to which Clapper replied, quote, "No, sir," and added, quote, "not wittingly," unquote, a response he later admitted was, quote, "clearly erroneous," end quote. Whereas in June 2013, Edward Snowden disclosed to a selective group of journalists National Security Agency documents exposing that bulk collection of American telephone records from telecommunications providers by the intelligence community was occurring. Whereas on June 21st, 2013, the Department of Justice unsealed charges against Edward Snowden for violating Actions 793D and 798A3 of the Espionage Act and theft of government property under Section 641 of Title 18 United States Code. Whereas on January 23rd, 2014, the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board's report on the National Security Agency's telephone records program found, quote, "no instance in which the program directly contributed to the discovery of a previously unknown terrorist plot or the disruption of a terrorist attack," end quote, and that the program significantly threatened and violated the constitutional rights of the American people. Whereas on May 7th, 2015, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that Section 215 of the Patriot Act did not authorize the bulk collection of telephone records, and therefore such collection was unlawful. Whereas on September 2nd, 2020, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled the National Security Agency's telephone records bulk collections program illegal and possibly unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment. Whereas the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit found that the telephone records bulk collection program did not play a pivotal role in any terrorism investigations. Whereas those involved in the collection of Americans' telephone records have yet to be held accountable for their illegal actions, further increasing the danger of continued government overreach and abuse of civil liberties. And whereas the United States government must protect whistleblowers who expose illegal and unconstitutional acts of abuse within our government, now therefore be it resolved that it is the sense of the House of Representatives that, 1, the National Security Agency's bulk collection telephone records program was illegal and unconstitutional. 2, Edward Snowden's disclosure of the program to journalists was in the public interest. And 3, the federal government should drop all charges against Edward Snowden. And that was the other ones aren't necessarily ready. Like they haven't been written out, so that's why I'm not reading them. But that one was really well written and legislation. It was just beautifully written, and they specifically point out, bam, 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 this is why. And honestly, it's unlikely that they're going to pass this because we have a bunch of freaking fascists in office.
It's unlikely it won't even get to the floor.
We got to see who from the squad votes on this, because this is really important.
Where's somebody from the squad saying something?
They have not said anything
right now,
yet.
if you're a true progressive or a leftist libertarian or whatever you want to call yourself, you would call a press conference on this right now and start talking about this.
Absolutely.
This is legislation we need to get passed. We need to protect freedom of speech. We need to protect freedom of the press. This is something we should not be joked around about. You know what I keep on thinking about, Johnny, is Rick and Morty. When the plane goes into the building, Remy goes, they're going to use it to take away our freedoms. Well, guess who co-authored that Patriot Act over there? You know what I'm saying? Who wrote the blueprint for it? Joe effing Biden.
Yep.
And the left is behind on the right when it comes to protection of our freedom of speech. And the one person who's the champion of it, they've been pretty much pushing her out the door. They don't want her on their squad, on their team. And it really is a shame. Because this opened the door for them doing what they wanted to do.
Yep.
It's important. And you got another people we're going to get into it. I don't want to jump the gun. But, they're for censorship. They're for censorship, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, no, you guys make a great point when saying that, there should be press conferences being held right now.
Right now.
There should be. Why are they not saying anything? The squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar. Why
because it takes a lot of balls.
This is crazy.
Which Tulsi has. She has balls of steel.
They're both in the Dem Party.
Yeah, to go after these people. I mean, you can go out. You can talk about Green New Deal, Medicare for all, blah blah blah. But when you attack the security state, that's when who
You're
has
the real
balls.
deal.
Yeah, and Bernie used to do that. So I don't know what's happened or who's been threatened or what's the situation is, but trust me, this is so important. And not only press conferences, but every single person right now watching and every single person in general. And I know we're gonna have our Assange Friends Slow News Day on tomorrow, but we it's so important that we amp up this situation, these bills, and we call all these people because nobody else is talking about this. The mainstream media is not talking about this. They're gonna be well, Tulsi Gabbard, blah, blah, she's getting cozy with right wingers. That's all they're talking about.
That's really
disgusting. Right wingers like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really calling her the right now in a week where she's produced these bills coming out which directly go after people who are real heroes, real whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. That they provided so much transparency to the public.
And to the press.
Yeah.
As members of the press, a lot of these people criticizing her, they should be freaking thanking her. Yeah. Hello, you think you're protected, but just if you because they don't publish the truth. But those of us who publish the truth, this is so important. This is so important.
I think we have a rundown of some stuff you have right over here listed and some of the stuff she's done.
I'm just going to list some of these things real quick. Tulsi Gabbard, this is the list of things she has done. Yep. This isn't anything new.
I'll go from the next one for you.
So
the first one?
We talked about this, the court ruling against the illegal NSA surveillance on civil liberties victory. She talked about the watchdog group's NSA reform recommendations back in, I think that was 2013. Well, the second one.
Yeah.
2013, right here.
The other one is the NSA funding program infringes on the civil liberties and freedom our troops have fought and died for.
Yeah.
The very liberties and freedoms our troops have fought and died for. That was 2013 too as well. This is the other one right here.
And she also commended the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that the NSA's bulk phone surveillance program was illegal. That was in 2015. And she voted against the effort to undermine net neutrality. This is also important. Again, this falls into the civil liberties category.
Where's Ron?
But she's reiterating that too. With the unplug internet kill switch that she and Massey and Paul Wyden and Peters introduced to protect civil liberties.
Gary Peters getting in on it.
She basically this is to unplug the internet. It's called the Unplug the Internet Kill Switch Prevention Act, which would prevent the president from using emergency powers to cut off Americans' access to the internet and undermine the Americans' constitutional protections. And this bipartisan bicameral bill was introduced in the Senate by Senator Rand Paul, Ron Wyden, and Gary Peters. And she said, quote, "The oath that I took as a soldier and as a member of Congress was to support and defend our Constitution. The freedoms enshrined in our Constitution cannot be taken for granted. Our legislation would fix a World War II era law that gives the president nearly unchallenged authority to restrict access to the internet, conduct email surveillance, control computer systems and cell phones. No president should have the power to ignore our freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution and violate our civil liberties and privacy by declaring a national emergency." And Massey said, "When governments around the world turn off the internet access, they do significant harm to the national economies and of their citizens and their citizens' civil rights. This bipartisan bill will ensure that no future American president can unilaterally trip an internet kill switch. Americans do not have to accept the promise that one person can deprive them of their First Amendment rights by flipping a switch."
There's a couple leaders of states that kind of have done this, and they got, the whole thing with Modi when he did this thing when it came to Kashmir, he got kind of blamed for this. They did it in, I think, in Bolivia. The president over there did it when it's been done. The kill switch has been thrown on several times. Therefore, you can keep the people just kind of suppressed and in the dark and not know what's going on. You don't let them coordinate with each other so that they can mount a defense or a protest, whatnot. It is definitely against everything we stand for when it comes to our civil liberties.
And just so you guys can see it, that's the actual bill. It's this one is HR 8336 to repeal certain war powers of the president under the Communications Act of 1934. This is also another bill she introduced from 2019 to 2020, and it's not ready yet, but she's, again, this is another umbrella of the civil liberties to kind of derail the president's power. And so this is like, these are things that are actual policy legislations. Like, it's not just her sitting there and talking and trying to one up Republicans. It's not just her sitting in her and talking and just, kind of trying to get points on Twitter for things. She's literally putting out legislation. And when, as someone that looks at policy, I'm sorry, she's like pushing policy after policy after policy after policy after policy. I don't have to agree with her on every single thing to be honest and be like, wow, she's the only one that's actually going after these protections that will ensure that we get, the ability to tell people, hey, Joe Biden's a liar. Hey, Obama's a liar. Hey, they're lying to you. Russiagate is fake. She's pushing policies that allow us to have the internet. To do that, to have the freedom of the internet, to not have the president, somebody like Donald Trump or somebody like Obama or Joe Biden or whoever, to have all this power. She's actually pushing legislation to empower people and to protect people who are speaking out and holding the government accountable. So to me, like, isn't that equally as important as everything else, if not more important than what a lot of these other people are doing? Like, like, especially right now when we're in a situation where, Bernie and the entire squad, the progressive wing, are pushing Joe Biden and campaigning. He's risking his literal life campaigning for Joe Biden. Like, instead of doing this or like joining in on this, I would hope the senator would join her on this, and we'll see what happens. I don't think
it's kind of sad right now, but at least you know where you stand when it comes to these things, because these are the foundations of which our democracy is built upon, and we need these things in place. And we've been further moving away from actual having freedom of speech, freedom of a press. We've been seeing more people like Edward Snowden and Assange being jailed for just truth-telling and giving us all this information. We have to put an end to it. And I don't know if you know this, fam, I'm a civil liberties guy, right? So if I have a candidate out there that protects our civil liberties and then protects our elections, I really got something. What do you got over here?
So recently, Tulsi Gabbard and Rodney Davis introduced a bill to ban vote harvesting and protect mail-in ballots from third-party predators. She said, the strength of our democracy lies in the integrity of our elections, whether in the midst of a pandemic where mail-in voting is likely to be drastically increased, or in the normal election, no one should get in between a voter and the ballot box. While some states have prohibited vote harvesting, many states lack any regulations that would stop third parties from fraudulently collecting and mishandling ballots, as has occurred in recent elections. Our bipartisan bill incentivizes states to take action and prevent any political parties or any third-party interest group from interfering with our sacred right to vote. Okay, so
somebody can just show up at the registrar's office with about 1,000 ballots and say, I collected these, I helped some old people out, I went to some nursing homes, I went to some Democratic clubs, so here's all these ballots, take them in there. And they go, okay, here you go, we'll take them on in. This is the chain of custody, which we talk about all the time. We have talked before about, a mail-in ballot. Just thinking about a mail-in ballot alone. And once again, I'm not against mail-in ballots, but only in certain situations. If it's an elder person, whatnot, but it has to be done with tracking. We need to know exactly where the ballot went and where it goes back to. But these ballots aren't even going back to the registrar or their office where they're doing the counting. They're going to P.O. boxes, and they have more room for ballots harvesting where they can take these things and throw them away or produce ones they want. It's just too many hands are touching these ballots, and this right here protects the chain of custody, something we are really just we're very passionate about when it comes to the chain of custody. We talk about it all the time. Remember, John, we were talking about the chain of custody from which they store the machines on. We're looking at how many hands are touching these people. Well, who's going to be in there with the machines, the chain of custody? Is that not under supervision or under public eyes and stuff? Because then somebody can go in there and change the programming, or somebody could do something to these things. The chain of custody is one of the most important things when it comes to our elections. This strengthens the chain of custodies, and it takes away a big mechanism which allows for a lot of cheating. And the fact that she's been yelled at about this thing, and I think she's been yelled at or been mocked or been
smeared.
chastised.
It's the Clinton machine.
It is.
Her.
But I think a lot of neo-progressives, and
Yeah.
sorry to point it out, I think they're really upset that
they're taking
she's
the bait.
one-upping Bernie when it comes to our elections.
They're taking the bait because if AOC or the Squad or Bernie would have introduced these bills, they'd be all over it.
Yeah,
Wow.
they'd be hailing them.
Johnny
exactly.
said that.
Johnny
Johnny
on
said
fire.
that.
Over it.
No, they would. They would.
I love you, Johnny.
And
Johnny
so
said that.
I just want to reiterate, though, even though I don't think this is the most important thing regarding our elections, I think the machines and the whole system needs to be redone. I don't want to deprive people of their ability to vote by mail, but we don't have a system right now that is secure. I would love for everybody to be able to vote online or by mail if we had a secure system, but we don't have a system of any oversight regarding our elections. So while I think this is good, I think she's right that there can be a lot of fraud. I've seen it in local elections here with the Democratic establishment ballot harvesting against progressives and rigging it that way. We have seen it here for a long time before this was even brought up by Project Veritas, and that's my point. She talked about the Securing Our Elections Act 3 years ago in 2017. She introduced it twice, I believe, or
it's
she
the only one to talk about open source.
It's the only one that talked about open source, so it wasn't just that. And so when people are talking about her highlighting smears against Ilhan Omar, it's literally bullshit. Like, she literally didn't do that. All she did was say Project Veritas video shows blah 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 blah, and in that video it does show that. Like, I don't like Project Veritas. I don't trust them as a source, and I think it was maybe politically, not the best interest to say that, but all she did was say this video, this thing. Okay,
it just provides proof, and we saw it. The guy sitting in there with hundreds and hundreds of ballots in front of him.
She didn't say, I believe that Ilhan Omar's race was fraudulent. She didn't say anything about Ilhan Omar. She didn't say anything about any particular party. She even talked about North Carolina, which was the Republicans doing it. So this isn't just like this is like, you have to take your emotions of Project Veritas out of this, because Project Veritas is in a way co-opting. I feel like these organizations like QAnon, Project Veritas I feel like they're psyops sometimes, because they turn people against. They have some truths in them, and then the left dismisses real things like child sex trafficking, like voter fraud, election fraud, and all these things that are real because the right says it. So in a way, I think this is all manufactured to get people to like literally not pay attention to those things, and it works because the minute Project Veritas says something, now you can't even touch it. And it's not right, because we have been talking about the election fraud.
We don't need
since
Project
2016.
Veritas to tell us about
that the Democrats cheat, that the Republicans cheat. This has been going on forever. We've been talking about it way before Project Veritas. So has she. And so when people like now, like their go to like little comment is like, oh, but Project Veritas, it's really stupid, because you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Exactly.
This has nothing to do with Project Veritas. Nobody is propping them up. This is about the fact that they took an issue that's already been an issue. Okay, well, so they took the issue. That doesn't mean that this issue hasn't been something we've been addressing, or she hasn't been addressing for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I'm just so sick of it.
We don't need Project Veritas to tell us that our elections are rigged.
No.
You know who told us? The Democratic lawyers in the court case with Jared Beck said they can go in the back room full with cigar smoke, pick whoever they want, and nothing has changed since then. In fact, things have gotten worse, and we don't have WikiLeaks there to show us once again how they are cheating, and the fact that people haven't dove into these elections, right, and really come up with some serious solutions. Like, I see a lot of people on there, a lot of the activists I know, like, well, request a mail-in ballot, then take it, fill it out, and then drop it in at the polling place. You don't have to wait in these long lines, and you can just get your vote counted right away. Well, you're not talking about the systemic issues, and you're not even saying to yourself, hold on a second, how come in L.A. we have long lines? Aren't we supposed to be the Mecca? Aren't we supposed to lead in progressive politics? Are you telling me we can't run quick, clean, fast, and effective elections that are transparent? You're just, once again, folding in and succumbing to the Democrats giving you shit and then running with it and trying to find Band-Aid solutions around their systemic issues.
Right.
Well, we gotta ask why.
Yeah.
Why are people doing that? It's because of the veil of ignorance, the wall of ignorance.
It is.
People don't want to believe that there's no democracy here.
And there's
in the
no
United
democracy.
States.
There's no democracy in our elections. Zero. Absolutely none.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's bipartisan.
It's
a bipartisan practice.
Bipartisan cheating.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just want to surmise exactly. We have 3 bills. Nicole Alexander Fisher, Tulsi Gabbard introduced 3 pieces of legislation to Congress yesterday for Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. 1 resolution each to drop the charges against them, as well as a bill to reform the Espionage Act and give whistleblowers greater protection. Ask your rep to support the following: H.Res 1175 to drop charges against Julian Assange, H.Res 1162 to drop charges against Edward Snowden, and H.R. 8452 to Protect Brave Whistleblowers Act to reform the Espionage Act to protect the future whistleblowers.
Very important.
Three huge, monumental pieces of legislation that could drastically change where we're going, because we're in fascism, we're getting worse. This would literally curtail that. Now, she's leaving Congress, which is unfortunate because she's literally the only one that has done this. And that really upsets me because it's like, damn, like she was the only one, like the only Democrat, like what's going on? And so I think she's doing what she can as right before she leaves.
Yeah, she's throwing haymakers on the way out and hoping that something lands. She also got the ballot harvesting bill last week. I mean, the woman has done so much great work on these last couple of weeks before this election, and it's a shame the way she's being attacked. But hey, now we understand. Now we know where we stand. It once again, it's the ignorance towards the issues of a lot of the neo-progressives of us, or whatever you want to call us, whatever you want to label us, but people who care about their civil liberties and want to end these regime change wars, who want to have clean and fair elections. I can't understand the clean and fair election part, how you guys are just taking it laying down. We went over these elections.
You're never going to get a progressive.
I mean, seriously, they can just sit there and they can fix these elections left and right. And there's certain things you just have to call for. You just have to call for transparency. Right? Call for transparency and free and fair elections. Yep. Right? And call for proper audits.
Even that's not a conspiracy theory. We just want fucking transparency.
Yeah.
How hard is it to have transparency in our elections?
And I just wanted to point out, because she's gonna get, she's already getting speared for. She's the only one working like with Republicans, Libertarians, Independents, whoever they are. Thomas Massey said, "You're welcome. The particular resolution of your son's case will have lasting implications for freedom of speech around the globe. Drop the charges. #free Assange." I don't agree with Massey on the majority of things, but I agree with him on this. And Christine Assange also thanked them and Tulsi Gabbard for standing together across the political divide to defend press freedom, your nation's First Amendment, and justice for my son, multi-award winning persecuted journalist, #Julian Assange, #drop the charges, #free Assange.
And he was the one, Thomas Massey, when the CARES Act, which is the biggest transfer of wealth up to the top right now, that's really going to affect a lot of people. A lot of people are going to die because they're going to be so just assed out when it comes to money and resources and healthcare, because they kicked all this money up the top. This guy drove from Kentucky to D.C. Once again, you don't have to agree with him on everything, especially with his libertarian point of views when it comes to fiscal policy, which is like, no, buddy, I'm not there with you. But once again, calling a quarry or quandrum, whatever you call it, to make sure that people had to show up there and stuff. He still couldn't get away from the Voice Act because Nancy Pelosi, and McCarthy, they held their lines and they made sure that nobody had to go on record for their vote for the CARES Act and nobody had to explain what was what. This guy was sitting there and going, they're giving all this money up to the top. Let's put them on record. You know what I'm saying? He was the only one to do that. So once again, you can find some agreement with some people on the right who feel these issues are just as strong to them as they are to us. We should all be united on this right now when it comes to the left. I can't believe that they're having more people on the right that are showing more interest when it comes to these bills, which I just put that up there real quick because I just want to say, I just want to put up HR 666 where there was some controversy.
I didn't agree with her on that.
A lot of people don't when it comes to the tracing bill, whatnot, and they felt that like they can show up to your house, test you, and if there is a family member who is tested positive or has a fever, they can take them away. Yeah. So this is the point where when it came to a lot of people on their civil liberties, a lot of libertarians.
And that was a lot of her own supporters criticized her. Yeah. So a lot of people say her supporters don't criticize her. Yes, they do, actually.
They
do. Very much do. Yeah. And a lot of her supporters were like, no, this isn't, I don't agree with this.
Well, that's the soldier in her, right?
I don't agree. Yeah.
That's the soldier in her. It was like, well, this is an outbreak. I got to get Dustin Hoffman from the movie Outbreak, and, we have to get the serum and find out what's going on, but we have to do what we have to do to make sure it doesn't spread. And, that's something a lot of people don't agree with when it comes to our civil liberties, but there is a virus at the end of this situation, which is kind of pulling the strings for making the decision she's standing by. I don't agree with it whatsoever, but I can understand it. And she's so, when it comes to our civil liberties, she does lay out the work we need to lay out, and that's important right over there. So she's very balanced when it comes to it. I don't like this bill that she put out.
Yep, HR 666.
666. Dr. Buttar, not Shahid Buttar, but Dr. Buttar talked about this when it came to the situation. Contact tracing. She's trying to stop the disease, trying to stop it, get it going forward, just like the movie Outbreak, fam.
Yeah.
She's being Dustin Hoffman. I don't agree.
Okay, so Pasta, this is a moment we've been waiting for because we're gonna go after the progressive, the hypocrisy, because Niko had a really great tweet, of course, and he said, everyone who swears Tulsi is some enemy of the left and have been obsessing over her over the last couple days are totally silent today after learning she introduced legislation to drop charges on Assange and Snowden and legislation to disallow the abuse of the Espionage Act. For any leftist who knows their history, they know that the Espionage Act has been used to foment and to torment and silence the left for decades. But I guess this is where to go back. This is where to go back pretending Tulsi doesn't exist so they don't have to put pressure on their heroes to support, huh? So like this is like just kind of like, you know, he's calling out the like a lot of the Bernie supporters that like, you know, they're like they've been smearing Tulsi, but they're like not going after Bernie. They're not like, hey Bernie, are you going to speak about Assange, or are you going to talk about what's going on here? Like, you know, they voting election integrity, something Bernie Sanders never touched. She has touched it. Civil liberties, something Bernie Sanders hasn't really touched. She has touched it. She has specifically mentioned Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, whistleblowers, the Espionage Act. You can't deny that. I can say, you know, I love Bernie Sanders attacking billionaires and attacking the corporations. I think that's all great and wonderful, but I want him to do this. Like, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. And you don't have to smear somebody just because you don't like them. You don't have to like Tulsi Gabbard to admit that all of these things she has said and done are extremely, extremely important. Grumpy Bernie Sanders, what do you say?
Pay attention to who co-sponsors Tulsi's whistleblower bills, which would drop the charges for Assange and Snowden, and pay attention to those who don't. We will finally separate the imperialist and the non-imperialist. So, I mean, I guess a lot of the squad are imperialist.
I mean, we'll see. That
Hello?
it hasn't been. I mean, they haven't said anything, but it hasn't been voted on.
You know,
yet,
Nancy
so.
Pelosi's not. She's going to protect the members of
course.
Congress. She's not going to let this go to the floor. They're going to just bury this, wait for Tulsi to be out of there, and be done. Be done with it, and that's what they're going to do. So.
And it's really sad, and this is why people need to make noise, because a lot of hinges on these spills now, because at least somebody in the United States is trying to do something. So the Assange case has gotten more coverage by independent media, so it's forced people to talk about it. And if we continue this pressure, I think it's at the very least it's going to cause like a lot of like, you know, public discontent.
Okay, so this is kind of a weird tweet. Daniel from Free Assange says, "Burners, we only care about policy." Yeah, right, you do. Tulsi, here's a great piece of legislation. Burners. But Tulsi said Project Veritas. Well, really, to tell you the truth, I wish burners did care about policy. I think burners care about
I care
rhetoric.
about policy.
I mean, yeah, but not all burners. You know, a lot of people, they care about rhetoric. They, you know, the whole virtue signaling thing. They think they're being virtuous and compassionate, and that the other side is not that way, and that's the way they got to be. But yet, when bread and butter policy comes to the table, they're going to ignore it.
I think they care about certain policy. Like, I think they care about, like, domestic policy, right? Overwhelmingly. They don't really care about, like, civil liberties policies, foreign policy policies. That is in the back burner. And like I said before, I understand why it's in the back burner. I understand we live in this system where you can't pay your rent, where you don't have health care, and all of these things. But the reason we are suppressed and we are made to believe that this is the way it has to be, it's because we are being censored. It's because we don't have the freedom to really hold the government accountable. And it's because a lot of people will go out and protest social issues, but they won't go out and protest economic issues or issues like Julian Assange. I have never seen a protest in California, Los Angeles. Glory Jones is the only one that goes and hands out flyers regarding Julian Assange at these protests, which I think is genius. She hands them both to the BLM people. She informs them, and she informs the Trump supporters of the Proud Boys. Like, hey, here, if you care about your civil liberties and the Constitution, here you go. Julian Assange is on trial, and he's about to be extradited for warning the public about U.S. crimes and for exposing this and blah blah blah. Like, I mean, you can't be a hypocrite. Like, there's hypocrites on both ends. And so it's that thing that happens on the left where, like, I understand why you don't care about these issues, but they're completely not separate. They're all entirely connected.
Intertwined. When you go down the rabbit hole, they're connected to that. Like I said, if you don't have freedom of speech, you don't have a free press, you're not going to have anything. You don't get nice toys. You don't get your Medicare for all. You don't get your Green New Deal. That's why they've been doing it to this point right now. Why do you think so many people talk out against a Green New Deal and climate change? Is because once again, if you control the narrative, you can control the people. And that's what they're doing.
Yep.
And the Democratic Party is part of that, especially the establishment leader. They control the narrative. They can control the people. And I just put that these bills further confirm that I made the right choice in supporting the Congresswoman. Tulsi Gabbard is throwing haymakers on the way out. If you want to know what a haymaker is, it's like a big wild punch that you just hope if you land. Because if you do land it, you land hard and you get something serious. Question, where are all the progressives voicing support for these important pieces of legislation? Do they not understand the urgency? Fam, they don't understand the urgency.
I think
I've been going through the Facebook feeds. I've been going through the Twitter feeds.
Well, Facebook
Facebook is where I expected to see some people go, you know something? I was never crazy about Tulsi, but this is right. We need to do this here right now.
There's a few of us on the Bernie left that are like, yeah, this is like, you know, we're supporting Assange, but it's like we're in a battle now. It's like we're being pushed. It's like I'm having my own battles, and I know my friend Ashley, like we were talking, like so many people are turning. Like it's like you're being bitten. You're turning into a Biden vampire. Like they're turning into, like, they're being bitten. I keep telling people, don't turn. Like you're turning into a zombie, like a vampire, because all these commentators on YouTube, all these people that were saying never Biden are now like, oh, we're going to vote for Joe Biden, blah, blah, blah. Instead of being focused on this stupid facade of a dumbass political election it's not even real. Why are you paying attention to what really is significant right now regarding Julian Assange, regarding the fact that our freedoms are already encroached upon, and instead they're busy like trying to smear people like Tulsi Gabbard, or trying to smear people like Julian Assange and pretend that he was a horrible person. So I guess freedom of speech doesn't matter because you don't like him. Like, it's just like we like. It's really, really bad, and I think more of us need to speak out if we are against it. Especially myself as you know, a Bernie supporter. Like, I think it's important that I call these people out, because I think there's a lot of hypocrisy on that end. There's a lot of people who are being fear-mongered, and I understand that this is a shitty situation to be in, Biden versus Trump. But you have to realize your life will not fundamentally change. And yesterday, Jonny and I did a few interviews with people who were in this homeless encampment in Echo Park. And all of them, every single one of them, literally said they didn't care who was becoming president, because they're still going to be homeless. They're still not going to have jobs. They're still going to be in the situation they're in. That is like the crux here. You guys need to realize there are more important things happening right now than this stupid election, which is all controlled.